We're revitalizing our auto sector and making Ontario an auto manufacturing powerhouse in North America and around the world.
We're bringing back a strong, thriving economy for this community, and we're delivering a national anchor for Canada's electric vehicle supply chain.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford there celebrating a major deal with Volkswagen. It will see the German automaker build an electric battery manufacturing facility in St. Thomas, Ontario. Now, this plant will be massive, approximately 370 acres in size, larger than 378 American football fields. It has the potential to create up to 3,000 direct and 30,000 indirect jobs, adding $200 billion to the Canadian economy over the coming decades. But the plant did not come cheap. Ontario is providing $500 million in direct incentives to Volkswagen, and the federal government is offering up to $700 million in capital expense grants. But that pales in comparison to the big ticket item that ultimately secured this plant for Canada. Ottawa is offering up to $13 billion in subsidies to the company tied to production output. François-Philippe Champagne is Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. He is in St. Thomas, Ontario. Minister, it's good to speak with you.
Well, it's very nice to talk to you. A big excitement here in St. Thomas, as you can see behind.
Well, a big excitement, but also a big price tag, sir. I mean, if you look at this, it could cost up to $14 billion in capital investments and subsidies for the government. So I wonder, what sort of guarantees did you receive from Volkswagen to ensure that this project ends up paying off?
Well, I would say the number that matters to Canadian is 5, David, if I may say, because 5 years is the payback. So obviously, the size of the investment is proportionate to the support we've given. This is going to be the largest manufacturing site in Canada. So really, that's what you need to put in perspective. But I would say we're Canada. We never win on the money. We win because we have the talent. We win because we have the ecosystem, the critical minerals, the renewable energy, the access to market. What we did was merely to level the playing field. But before we spend $1, Volkswagen need to spend to build a facility of $7 billion. And then we only come with production support if and when they produce and sell any batteries. And that is over 10 years, and it's subject to the provision of the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States. So that's why I'm saying it's a good deal for Canadians, because the company is planning to be here for 100 years, and we're getting back, you know, the investment we've made in 5 years.
So on
that's
that,
why
Minister,
I say
the 5 years, do you
Sure.
mean 5 years from now, or do you mean 5 years after the plant starts producing these batteries?
5 years when they start producing batteries, because, you know, like I said, there's no outlay. We're going to be there with the capital investment. We said $700 million. That's what we do traditionally. But what I'm saying to you, David, and Canadian, is that before there's any support on production, they need to build a $7 billion plant. And then the production support only comes if and when they can manufacture a battery and sell a battery. And that's why this is down the road. And if you take that in perspective, you know, the Trillium Institute has calculated in their report that the equivalent of the, I would say, the investment would represent anything between $200 billion to $400 billion in terms of economic output for Canada over 30 years.
Right.
And if you put yourself in a pre-pandemic world, $300 billion is the size of a federal budget. So that's why I'm saying this is transformational. But again, it's not the money that made it happen. It's the people of Canada. It's our talented workers. The money is merely to be, you know, level the playing field with the United States through the competition we had to go through.
Let's talk about that money, because you've effectively matched the incentives offered in the Inflation Reduction Act, which is, you know, production subsidies on the back end after batteries are made and sold. That differs from what we saw in the budget, where it's investment tax credits largely at the front end. So why does this deal need to be so different from the broad approach laid out in Chrystia Freeland's budget?
Well, because there's far more condition. This is based on contract, and this is only contingent liabilities. So in that sense, what we decided was to level the playing field with a number of conditions. And I would think that this is the way to do. This is how we've decided. We said we'd use part of the strategic investment fund, and part we're going to be providing production support. But we're going to put that in contract because there is a number of conditions with respect to that. Because one of the main conditions, David, is only that kind of support will only be provided ever if the Inflation Reduction Act and all its conditions would be in place in the United States, because this is merely to level the playing field. That's why I'm saying this is not why we won. If there's anyone thinking that we won because we put some money on the table, that's not. I was there from the first discussion to the last. We won because of the people. We won because they had access to critical mineral, renewable energy. Their vision is 100 years. So the incentives we provide is merely for a couple of years. It's necessary to be part of the competition, but you can never win on that when you're Canada and you have a neighbor. We can outspend far more than Canada could ever do.
Okay, so is this something, though, that your government is willing to do again? I mean, we've got the LG Stellantis plant joint venture in Windsor. Is that the sort of project that could end up with these sort of production subsidies to level the playing field with the IRA, or any other players we don't know about, or is this just a one-off for Volkswagen?
Well, we said, you remember when we put that in the fall economic statement, we said we're Canada. We're going to be selective, we're going to be targeted, we're going to be very smart because, we can't really compete with our southern friend. So we have a Canadian response to that. Volkswagen is the first one. We are in negotiation with LG Stellantis. And like the Prime Minister said, there can be a very few number of them in order to have government support in that. But I would say one good thing, David, is when it's good for Volkswagen, it's good for a lot of people. So people have been approaching us, but what we said would be very targeted because, that's the size. What matters for us is to keep a relative proportion with the United States because you want to seize that generational opportunity and you want to make sure you invest in the auto sector for the next 20, 30, and 50 years. That's what we've achieved today. And like I said, this is this is going to be the largest plant of Volkswagen overseas for them. And the first one we have attracted in 35 years and the first European. So when I say it's a big win for Canada, I can tell you since Volkswagen announced, my phone keeps ringing because they know how Volkswagen could be thorough in their analysis. And in the words of the global CEO Oliver Bloom, he said, Canada is the logical choice. And today we've delivered for Canadian workers.
So I just want to clarify. You say you're in discussions with LG and Stellantis. Does that mean those negotiations are on a deal similar to this, to deal with production subsidies, to deal with the United States? Because you're saying you're being selective. I just wonder how many you're going to be selective with.
Yeah, no, but like we said, a very few. So yes, we have discussion with LG Stellantis, obviously. Now we did Volkswagen, but we're Canada. We can only do a few. And the emphasis is always going to be around our people, the renewable energy, the critical minerals. Because like I said, when you put these incentives, that merely gets you a seat at the table, but then you need to campaign to win these projects. Because, every jurisdiction in the world, Canada has its response, Germany puts its response, the European Union does something similar. So it's very competitive out there. So when you provide these type of incentives, you merely make the mark. Then you need to focus on people, on talent, and what we can offer to these companies.
I wonder, Minister, there's a lot of talk there from Premier Ford and others today about, hey, they're going to mine things in Ontario, the minerals are going to come from Ontario, but the challenges in getting a lot of these mining projects developed in this country. Things go slow, too slow certainly for industry. So I wonder, could that potentially impact the Volkswagen operations in St. Thomas? And how do you speed up and ensure a steady supply of these natural resources while also respecting environmental considerations and Indigenous rights?
Well, I think this is going to be a catalyst for us to do more. The sense you get here, David, this is a community together. We had the First Nation chiefs were here, the local warden, the mayor. I think everyone understands that, an investment like that for Volkswagen for the next century, we're talking 100 years, needs to involve everyone in the community. And to your point, I think this will be one of the catalysts to make sure that we not only mine, but we refine these critical minerals. Gone are the days that we take our critical minerals or natural resources and we ship it. Now, what we said is that we want to mine, we want to refine, we want to keep as much of the value added in the chain here in Canada. We're not going to do what we did 100 years ago, it's just mine it and ship it. As you see today, we're going to create high quality jobs. We're going to get the high value part because what is going to be done here is about 65% of the value of a battery and the battery is 40% of the value of an average car. So we're capturing the value-added part right here in Canada this time.
I just have one last question, Minister, before we let you go.
Sure.
The range for subsidies for the battery production and sale is about $13.2 billion at the high end. Is that a ceiling? If Volkswagen exceeds the production projections you have and produces and sells even more batteries, can that subsidy go up, or is 13.2 the limit?
The range is 8 billion to 13, and like you said, this is based on the production schedule, and that's part of the contract. And again, like I said to Canadians, this is only in future if and when ever they produce one battery and can sell one battery, and subject to the terms of the IRA. So if there was a reduction in the United States, there would be an equivalent reduction in Canada, and this is over 10 years. That's why what I say, the numbers that matter to Canadian is 5. Within 5 years, that's the payback. And I think anyone in finance would tell you that's a pretty good deal.
Okay, Minister Champagne, thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me, David.